Hello, my name is Mohammed Etadali and I'm so very happy to be among you today. Through this video, I'll first try to present a definition of blended learning. Then I will talk about some of the design components of a blended learning program in academia. In the last section, I will be presenting some of the challenges and some suggestions or solutions to those challenges. It is undisputed that technology constitutes one of the two fundamental components of blended learning, the other one being the human factor. Technology is evolving, and so is blended learning. And that makes defining blended learning very difficult, depending on how much face-to-face interaction a course or a program needs, and how much of the learning is going to happen online. What kind of delivery method is intended? On CD, online, on PC, or through web-based mobile applications? Whether direct instruction is the purpose or flipping the class is sought. Are the different components of a blended learning program going to be arranged in a linear way? For example, do learners go through the online component before the face-to-face component? Or are they going to use the online component after the face-to-face component to reinforce what they had already learned? Or whether the relationship of components are nonlinear and each can occur at the same or a different time frame. And what learning outcomes are intended? In other words, how would the different components of a blended learning program affect our learners, and what sort of learners would we be having if we made changes to these components? Based on all these, your definition of blended learning could slightly be different. In this presentation, I am adopting the 2013's Graham definition of blended learning, which defines it as the product of combined doses of online and face-to-face instruction. A blended learning program in academia has these basic design components. The first one is the vision and philosophy. As a descriptive picture of the future potentials of a higher education institution, a vision grounded in the philosophies of teaching and learning is required. The next important component is the curriculum, which is the systematic and intended packaging of different competencies learners should acquire through the program. Then there is the policy and institutional infrastructure, basically the rules and regulations. And the next is the availability of some evaluation procedures, since, as I said before, blended learning is evolving, and there is always some kind of need for research and refinement. Another important design component of a blended learning program is the availability of infrastructure, facilities, resources, and support. For example, if you plan to use virtual reality in your classrooms, you should make sure that your institution can support you with the required hardware and software. And if you run into a problem, there would be some help available. The next important component is partnership. Academia, industry, and businesses all have something to offer to each other. Academia produces knowledge, industry uses it, and businesses sell it. However, industries nowadays are also producers of knowledge, and so are the businesses. Each one can gain something by tapping into the other's resources, and partnership makes it possible. The next component is a plan for any professional development, or as some call it, professional learning. Academicians are experts in their own field, but when it comes to blended learning, many of them do indeed need training and retraining and retraining. Do not forget, technology is evolving, and major components of a blended learning program is the availability of some learning support mechanism for both learners and teachers. Chair Ping and Tiong Chon in 2017 portrayed the relationships of these components in this figure. Due to several factors, implementing a blended learning regime in academia does not happen without any challenges. One of the main challenges is the lack of institutional vision. Then it is the lack of balance, sometimes too much or too little of either the online or the face-to-face component. Then is the lack or missing of some of the competencies and literacies, for example, the insufficient computer knowledge or the insufficiency of cyber literacy. Another challenge, especially for the techno-savvy younger academicians, is a sort of cyber idealism, thinking that using technology is the absolute solution. We know that at least in the case of teaching and learning languages, the face-to-face component is still important, if not crucial. The next is the inadequacy of professional development or professional learning. If technology evolves and the research and development department is supposed to suggest refinements to the program, then the teaching staff should duly be trained. And even more important than that is the culture of professional development. This especially happens in some academic institutions that are mostly run by governments. The ultimate goal of the teaching staff after being recruited is to do the minimum to get up the promotion ladder and nothing more. These, in my personal experience, are very instrumental in slowing down the process of change. And the last one is avoiding partnership or even being close to it. As for the first challenge, a suggested step would be formulating some sort of shared institutional vision. If there is the lack of balance, it would be useful to take a look at learning outcomes and put learning first, then decide which component and how much of it. The missing or absent competencies can be achieved through extensive forward-thinking learning and support. In case of idealism, realism is suggested that might lead to some sort of redesign. Who knows? It might lead to more frequent use of the online component. The solution to the next challenge is already frequently available. Having more blending professional development programs, for example, programs such as this very conference. For the culture of professional development, I guess the only way is going grassroots. Things should start from the society in general and then woven back into academia. And for the last challenge, again, blend it. Academics can forge partnerships within their academic units, for example, between the Department of Computer Engineering and the Department of Languages. And they can create partnerships between the academic entity and the private sector. Thank you very much for watching so far. If you have further questions or comments, please feel free to email me